You've just seen a picture of me in my Adinkra cloth whilst I was working in Ghana in West Africa. I'd been sent there by VSO, Voluntary Service Overseas, to a teacher training college. I was teaching English there, even though I hadn't at that point got my PGCE. I'd never taught English before. I didn't have a syllabus. I didn't have a textbook. I didn't have any guidance or anyone to advise me. It was an interesting time. Anyway, I asked the students to write an essay, and when I got the scripts back and started marking them, my goodness me, the number of English mistakes I'd made was absolutely enormous. And of course I felt I ought to mark it very carefully. After I'd finished the first class, 35 essays, there was more red ink on them than there was blue. And I looked at that and thought, ooh, this isn't good. This is going to be really depressing for the students. So I marked the other two classes much more gently. And I had to go and apologise to the first class when I gave the books back, saying I didn't really mean to put so much red mark on them. Anyway, I want to share with you now the advice I wish I had been given 50 years ago. So my idea is that first you ask the students to write their essay or their story or whatever it is, and you then look at them, but you don't mark them. What you do is collect errors. You collect the errors that are common across many students, and then list those for yourself, up to say a dozen, but it's 2 or 3 that's really important. Then we go into class and teach the first 1 or 2 or even possibly 3 of those errors. We talk about how they work and do some practice on them. Then we give the essays back to the students and ask them to check their work to see if they've made any of the mistakes we've talked about and see if they can correct them. Once they've done that, a really important step is to ask them, how many errors did you find, and praise the students who found the most errors. It's a whole culture we're looking at changing here, changing a culture of actually seeking out your own mistakes and then learning from them. So we need to encourage students to do that. Then we put students into pairs, or 3s I think might be better than pairs, possibly 4s, and ask them to swap their essays around and to double check the work. So then there's so many things going on there. I mean, not only are you actually checking for the errors, but some discussion's going to come up as to why that's wrong and what it should be. So the students will start teaching themselves. And also, the weaker students will see the sort of work that the more advanced students are doing and see what they have to aim for. Everybody gets a whole amount of learning in. And then again, you call the whole class together and how many errors did you find, and praise the people who found the most errors. Okay, then of course they redo the essays or check or correct them. And depending on how many errors you've found, you actually, if you've got lots, you then redo that process until you've got through all of your errors that you thought were important. At which point they can then either rewrite them so you can read them, and at that point you can mark the essays. So after they've already been used to teach. And there's so much going on there. The interaction with the students and the whole way of thinking about essays is not right or wrong, but how can I use it to learn from? And have you noticed how little marking you get to do with how much work and how much time it takes and how much learning goes on without you getting a red pen at all? So I do recommend that. Now, the situation I've just been talking about obviously was the one I was working in, where all the students were learning English and all of them making mistakes. But of course, you might not be working with a group of students who are all learning English. You might have a mixed group with native speakers. The whole process is still possible, but instead of just focusing on English language, then you can look at the content. Okay, we've done this essay on whatever it was. What are the key things we would expect to find? Okay, here are the difficult words that we use. have you got the spellings right? And then you might pick up 1 or possibly 2 English language points for the EAL pupils to be focusing on. And then you get your groups to look at those things. Have they all been included? Have they got the spellings right? Have they got the English language right? So you're still using the same sort of process, much less marking, much more work and much more discussion with the pupils. So if you like that idea, have a go and let me know if it worked. Bye.